My name is Merle Miller, and I aspire to be the worst speaker in this room. What goes through your mind when you hear me say that? Besides the fact that you could be looking at a complete moron. This morning, I'd like to talk to you about some exceptionally poor speakers that changed the world. Ordinary men who became extraordinary by overcoming things like stuttering, lisps, quirky mannerisms, unnatural disposition, and embarrassment, to gain enormous influence and to have an enormous impact on the people around them, on their country, and I believe, ultimately, the world. My goal is to take the next 5 to 7 minutes and open your eyes to what these incredibly successful people accomplished despite very little natural skill and ability with speaking. Every one of the examples that I'm going to give you is intended to relentlessly jackhammer into your mind the fact that you can be Louisa, Greg, Jim, Terry, Dan, all of you can be the speaker you want to be if you persevere and you practice consistently and correctly. Okay? I've been really excited to give this talk. I hope it adds value to you. I hope it encourages you. With that, we'll dig into the lesson a little bit. The purpose is going to be to encourage you and I in our own journey to becoming the best speakers we can be, and to refocus our efforts on what I believe to be the single most important part of any talk or any speech that's given anywhere around the world. Move this back just a little bit. You ready for it?
Ready.
It is the content. Sounds simple, doesn't it? My friends, when you open your mouths to talk, have something to say. Have something to say worth listening to. And I suggest the gift of delivery will soon follow. Okay? Let me give you a couple examples. You got the paper in front of you there. I hope I had enough for everybody. Did it reach? Yeah. A couple examples of what I'm talking about. Example number one, Jonathan Edwards. Anybody ever heard of Jonathan Edwards? A couple of, no, not a single person. Born 1703. He was an evangelical Calvinist who was regarded as one of the leading theologians of his day. Okay? One of the greatest thinkers America has ever produced. At age 9, let me give you a little bit of a history on this guy. At age 9, he wrote some remarkable papers on materialism. A 9-year-old kid. Okay? At 12, he wrote some remarkable work on natural philosophy. 1 month before his 13th day, the guy entered Yale University. Graduated a short time later, valedictorian of his class with highest honors. That's what this guy did. Sharp cat of a man. So you're thinking to yourself, of course he was a natural speaker. Completely wrong. Totally wrong. He had an unusually monotone voice, according to the research that I did. An unusually monotone voice. He just talked like this, read from his notes. Okay. That's what he did. Okay? Some of the notes that I found when I was researching is, listen to this. He was known for not having a commanding voice, his gestures very few, but his sermons so overwhelming, and their power and influence so amazing, he became almost legendary. Wild, isn't it? One of his arguably greatest speeches, called Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God, was read in an unusually monotone voice. But according to the notes and the research that I did, it had an almost supernatural life to it. Anybody ever heard of Jonathan Edwards? You? A couple of you? All right, the rest of you just going to sit here with your bare faces hanging out? I got you. Let's see another example. How about Abraham Lincoln? Anybody ever heard of Abraham Lincoln? A couple more. Everybody except Dan. Abraham Lincoln, arguably one of the greatest presidents in American history. He both saved the Union and freed the slaves in one fell swoop, this guy. Now you're saying to yourself, oh, well, yeah, president, he had to be a great speaker. Right out of the box. Totally wrong. Listen to some of these. I'm just going to read some of the notes that I found on Abraham Lincoln. Okay? Back when he was first speaking and some of the press clippings came out. William Herndon says, when he first began speaking, his voice was shrill, squeaking, and unpleasant. His general look, form, pose, his wrinkled, dry skin, everything seemed against him, but he soon recovered. Abram Bergman says, whenever he began to talk, his eyes flashed. Every facial movement helped express his idea and feeling. Then, involuntarily, all thought or consciousness of his uncouth appearance, his awkward manner, and even his high-keyed, unpleasant voice completely vanished. He sounds like somebody who could be sitting here. I can relate with this guy, you know, when he's first starting to talk. Erasmus Keyes, if ever there was a diamond in the rough or good fruit enclosed in the shabby husk, it was Abraham Lincoln. Albert Riddle, I could go on. Never was there a more persuasive speaker. His quaint logic and taking unaccustomed ways were absolutely irresistible. And this is something I found that I just thought was kind of neat. It doesn't have anything to do with what we're talking about here. But Henry Whitney says, I just want to read this for you. He says he probably had, talking about Abraham Lincoln, he probably had as little taste or style about dress and attire as any man who was ever born. He simply wore clothes because it was needful and customary. Whether they fitted or didn't was entirely above or beneath his knowledge. I just thought it was really cool. What a neat guy, you know. And yet he had no natural talent, and he had everything stacked against him when he first started. Abraham Lincoln. Okay? Let me give you another example. You're not convinced? Winston Churchill. Winston Churchill, as Prime Minister, he used his great speaking skills to inspire all of Great Britain, all right? And to mobilize the free world in the fight against tyranny and oppression. That's some of the things Winston Churchill did. So you think, oh yeah, he had to be a great speaker. No doubt about it. Wrong again. He had two serious speech impediments, a lisp and a stutter, when he first started out. He trained himself to overcome them. Here's some of the things I found on Winston Churchill. He accomplished all he did while having two serious speech impediments, a lisp and stutter. Yet he trained himself to be the greatest speaker of his and maybe any other time. He is living proof. The notes that I found online said he is living proof that weaknesses can be overcome and extraordinary can be attained. I think it's just a phenomenal guy to be able to overcome his weaknesses like that. Still not convinced? Let me give you one more. Let's go back a couple years. How about Moses? All right? Back in the Bible times. Moses. Here's a guy that literally parted the Red Sea. Okay? And changed the course of Jewish history by delivering the Israelites out of Egypt. Oh, you're saying to yourself, oh, of course. Now this guy, he was born with speaking. He was a motivational speaker. He took the Israelites all through the, whatever all they did out there. I don't know what it was. He delivered them out of Egypt, all right? Totally wrong. He had very, very little natural speaking ability. He spoke with a profound stutter. Listen to what some of the translations of the Bible say about Moses. The Knox translation says, Moses saying, Lord, have patience with me, but all my life I've been a man of little eloquence. And now that you, my master, have spoken to me, I am more faltering, more tongue-tied than ever. That's what he was saying to God. New Berkeley version says, please, Lord, I am no orator now, orator being a speaker, and I never was. And now while you're speaking to your servant, I am slow of speech and of an awkward tongue. Do you get what I'm trying to tell you here? You smell what I'm stepping in? All right. Okay. Now, of course, I don't aspire to be the worst speaker in this room. Okay? I just want to get your attention. But I do want, very desperately, to build the kind of passion and conviction that these four men had in spades. In closing, I know the red light's on. Action's getting ready to kick me off. Everybody. I think Toastmasters is a great organization. I do, and I don't want to be misinterpreted. I think it's a great way for us to improve our speaking skills. However, let us not underestimate the simple and raw power of having something to say worth listening to. Okay? If you're here this morning, you feel like you'll never have a presentation, the perfect hand gesturing, perfect voice inflection. If you feel like you'll never have those things, I can hang with you. I'm a little nervous up here now, a little shaky. I can hang with anybody that feels like they might not have the perfect material. Every time you get discouraged, I want you to think back to this lesson. Think back to me up here. And I want you to remember that some of the most inspiring, most successful people in the world accomplished amazing things. Not by being the perfectly polished speaker, but by simply having something of value to say and the guts to stand up and say it. That's what I got from these four guys. Very inspiring. In closing, I'm done here. I'll get out of your way. I appreciated talking with you this morning. I've really enjoyed it. I've been excited about this lesson. If there's one thing that you remember, to look past any of your personal struggles. I know some of you in here, myself included, there are things that we struggle with speaking. I challenge you to look past those. Look past any weaknesses. Look past any speech impediment, any self-consciousness you might have. Let's start by simply having something meaningful, worthwhile, and powerful to say, and I believe we will be given the ability to say it.